They built 96 homes on my land, each one worth about $400,000, before I pulled the deed from a manila envelope and set it on the courtroom desk. 36 weeks of construction, 96 roofs, and not a single one legally theirs. By the time the gavel hit wood, every nail belonged to me again. Welcome to HOA Max. I'm Jacob Reeves, a civil engineer out of Plano, Texas, who thought he'd retire building parks, not fighting paper bullies. If you're new here, make yourself at home. Hit subscribe if you want to see how a quiet guy with a mortgage calculator took down an entire board. And tell me where you're watching from. I like knowing which corner of America is dealing with their own HOA headache tonight. It started the week my dad's ashes came back from the crematorium. I'd promised him I'd hold on to the old tract, 12 acres east of Spring Creek, registered in our name since 1979. He used to joke that dirt was the one thing they couldn't repossess. When he died, I put the urn on the drafting table and swore to keep it that way. 2 months later, I woke to the clatter of rebar and diesel. A developer called Evergreen Crest had broken ground just beyond my fence line, or so I thought. By lunch, their survey flags were deep inside my parcel, bright orange against the ragweed. The foreman waved when I walked up, said, "Talk to the HOA. They approved everything." I didn't even know there was an HOA. Turned out a community association had been chartered for the subdivision next door, and through a bad merge of county plats, my 12 acres had been lumped into their Phase 3. Paperwork glitch, they said. Temporary. Meanwhile, graders chewed through my topsoil like termites in a library. I went to their office, a prefab trailer with a laminated logo and stale coffee smell. The president, Lorna Mace, was waiting in a pastel suit and half a smile. "Mr. Reeves, we assume consent under the 2021 Development Covenant. You'll be compensated once title reconciliation finalizes." Her voice was sugar poured over gravel. I never signed a covenant. I told her, that land isn't yours to reconcile. She leaned back, tapping a pen with a gold HOA logo. "Then maybe you should read your father's filings more carefully. We've already sold 96 lots." I walked out shaking. That night, I pulled every deed, survey, and tax statement I had. 3 decades of documents in banker boxes that smelled like mildew and toner. My fear wasn't losing the money. It was betraying my dad's trust. He'd worked nights to pay off that dirt. The idea that someone could paperclip it away made my skin crawl. The next morning, I called an old friend, Marie Delgado, a real estate attorney with coffee-stained teeth and a stack of highlighters that looked like a rainbow of doom. "Send me everything," she said. "And Jacob, don't set foot on that site until we know whose dust you be standing on." We spent the week untangling plats and parcel IDs. County Lot 47A, Reeves Family Trust. County Lot 47B, Evergreen Crest Developers, LLC. Between them, an unrecorded strip 38 feet wide the HOA claimed as a utility easement. Knowledge nugget number 1. In Texas, any unrecorded easement has no standing against a recorded deed unless it's been openly and continuously used for 10 years. Evergreen had been there 6 months. Marie smelled opportunity. They built without proper notice. You got them on encroachment, maybe even trespass. But let's not swing yet. Let's document. So I documented. Every dawn before work, I photographed progress. Foundations, lumber deliveries, trench lines. I logged times, license plates, invoices. I even bought a decibel meter to record construction noise exceeding the county's 70 dB limit after 7 p.m. The sound of hammering became my metronome, anger my caffeine. A neighbor, Thomas Lee, 50-something HVAC tech with a limp, came by carrying sweet tea and curiosity. Heard of the guy fighting the HOA. About time someone did. He told me they'd fine him $300 for painting his porch non-approved eggshell. His laughter was half wheeze, half resignation. I told him what was happening on my land. He squinted toward the cranes. They think you'll cave once the homes are done. Nobody fights them that long. Maybe he was right, but grief has its own fuel. I kept digging, title chains, HOA budgets, meeting minutes printed on cheap paper that still smelled like toner and arrogance. Somewhere in there, I'd find the signature they shouldn't have used or the clause they'd misfiled. The deeper I went, the more rot surfaced. Board members approving contracts with their relatives, maintenance fees diverted to an off-ledger account, the community's own money funding the invasion of my soil. I wanted to shout it from the cul-de-sac, but Marie warned me, let them think you're lost in paperwork. They'll hang themselves with confidence. She was right. By May, the HOA posted a shiny banner. Grand opening, Reeves Ridge Estates. My father's name, twisted into branding. I took a picture of that banner under the evening light and promised the wind, I'll get it back. The banner hung there for weeks, snapping in the hot wind like it was taunting me. The HOA sent me a courtesy notice on June 12th, claiming I was obstructing construction vehicles by parking my truck too close to the service road. I hadn't moved it in 3 months. It sat exactly where my dad used to park his old Ford when we'd camp on weekends. That truck wasn't in their jurisdiction, but I paid the $150 fine anyway. Marie said it was smarter to let them build the paper trail themselves. By July, the first buyers were touring model homes. That's when I started to think like an engineer again. Every house, every sidewalk, every sewer line. Those weren't just structures. They were data points. And every data point could prove a trespass. Marie introduced me to Alex Navarro, a county surveyor who moonlighted as a GIS analyst. He had a habit of spinning a mechanical pencil while talking, like he was drilling holes in invisible maps. We overlaid satellite imagery, building permits, and county records. What we found stopped in mid-spin. Jacob, he said quietly, their entire Phase 3 sewer main runs through your title boundary, 610 linear feet. We printed the map on heavy stock, red lines slashing through beige parcels. Alex added a certified stamp. The ink's still warm when I touched it. That's when I knew. Somewhere in those lines was the secret leverage Marie had been hinting at. Meanwhile, the HOA kept pressing. Lorna, the president, called me during dinner one evening. Mr. Reeves, we noticed you've been taking photographs. Our security team flagged you loitering near the sales office. It makes residents uncomfortable. Residents on my land? I asked. You're on community property now, she replied. Please respect boundaries. I laughed, but it came out brittle. You want to review those boundaries before using that word again. After I hung up, I noticed a white SUV idling near my mailbox for the first time. The same one showed up twice that week, each time just long enough to make its point. Early the next morning, Thomas found me cataloging the latest foundation pour. They're watching you, he said, motioning toward the SUV. They do that when they're scared. Good, I said. Fear keeps people careful. He chuckled. You're turning into your old man. That hit harder than he knew. My father had once taken on a developer who tried to reroute a creek behind our property. Won the case, but the stress nearly killed him. Now here I was, same fight, different century. Midway through July, Marie called. I think we found your opening, she said. That sewer line. They can't convey title until it's inspected and bonded, but it's on your property. If you grant or revoke access, you control their final approval. Meaning, they build a neighborhood on top of a dependency they don't own. I didn't sleep that night. I drafted letters, shredded them, wrote again. The temptation to storm their office was strong, but the smarter play was patience. Let them finish. Let every nail, every brick, every inch of asphalt become evidence of overreach. Knowledge nugget number 2. In most states, a public utility easement must be voluntarily granted by the landowner or established through eminent domain proceedings, neither which had happened here. Any infrastructure placed without such authority remains trespassing property, regardless of occupancy. Still, their harassment escalated. I started collecting it like baseball cards. July 18th, violation notice, overgrown vegetation exceeding 10 inches. The grass was 6. July 25th, improper waste storage. 1 empty paint can in my truck bed. August 2nd, anonymous noise complaint. At 3 a.m., police conducted a wellness check. The officer apologized on the porch. They said you might be unstable. Just tired, I replied. That night I sat on the steps, watching the new houses glow under sodium lamps, and whispered to the urn inside. They think I'm unstable. Maybe that's what keeps me standing. In early August, I mailed certified letters to every regulatory body that touched construction: county inspector, environmental quality office, water district. I didn't accuse, I inquired. Could you please confirm whether proper easement documentation was filed for the Phase 3 sewer main intersecting Parcel 47A? By September, one letter came back stamped "No record found." That was the crack in the wall. Marie grinned when she saw it. We're halfway there. Now we let them dig themselves deeper. And dig they did. The HOA hosted a Community Appreciation Day that month, full of speeches about progress and growth. Lorna stood on a makeshift stage, microphone in hand, her voice bouncing off unfinished stucco. We turned empty fields into homes, she said. That's what leadership looks like. I stood in the crowd, anonymous baseball cap pulled low, recording the speech. Leadership, I thought, is knowing when to shut up before confessing to trespass in front of 50 witnesses. Later that week, Marie and I met at a diner off Route 75. The air smelled like burnt coffee and freedom. She slid a folder across the table. Inside, a draft of a quiet title action and a petition to enjoin further development. Not yet, I said. They're still pouring driveways. Let them finish. The more complete it gets, the stronger the leverage. She sighed. You're playing with dynamite, Jacob. Then let's make sure it blows in the right direction. As she packed her files, I added, when this goes public, we do it by the book. No drama, no shouting, just facts and the law. Of course, she said, but the smile said she was already picturing the headlines. By late September, 96 homes stood ready for inspection. The HOA scheduled its final board meeting to authorize certificate of occupancy filings. I marked on my calendar with a red pen, October 3rd, 7 p.m. That would be my moment. For now, I played the waiting game, keeping my silence and stacking proof. The sound of nail guns had faded, replaced by the hum of air conditioners in half-empty houses. They thought it was over. They thought I'd been buried under paperwork in fear. They had no idea I'd been writing the ending from day one. October came heavy with humidity, the kind that made blueprints curl at the edges. I drove past the finished subdivision every morning, watching realtors prop open doors and hang wreaths that read "Welcome Home." The irony stung. Marie warned me not to gloat early. Paper beats emotion, Jacob. Keep your temper laminated. I smiled at that. She had a way of turning legal advice into bumper stickers. The day before the board meeting, Alex handed me the final survey packet, stamped, bound, notarized. He'd even numbered every page tab. If they argue, hand them page 12, he said. That's where the sewer line crosses your deed by 48 feet. I tucked it into a fireproof folder like a secret weapon. That folder became my companion. Rhodes' shotgun slept beside the desk, never left my sight. Thomas stopped by with his thermos of sweet tea. You ready for tomorrow? He asked. As ready as they're unready, I said. He laughed, coughing mid-sip. If they had half your patience, this place might not be so broken. Patience wasn't virtue. It was calculus. Every week I'd log the HOA's expenditures, inspection fees, landscaping invoices, insurance premiums. Knowing each dollar spent on my land deepened their liability. By now, they'd poured more than $1.2 million into improvements they didn't legally own. Knowledge nugget number 3. Under most state laws, improvements made in good faith on another's land confer no automatic ownership, only potential claim for restitution, subject to offsets. In short, you can build a castle, but if it's on my soil, it's still my castle. That night I sat in the truck outside the subdivision gates, windows down, listening to the rhythmic click of the security lights cycling. Somewhere in those rows of identical houses, people were planning their first holidays, unaware their deeds floated on quicksand. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. It was a kind of sorrow for how badly the system had failed them, too. The next evening, I walked into the HOA's meeting room, a repurposed model home that smelled of air freshener and nerves. About 30 residents filled folding chairs. A long table held the board. Lorna in her pastel armor, two other members flipping through packets, and a county liaison checking his phone. I waited until public comment. When my name was called, Lorna's smile stiffened like pain in winter. "Mr. Reeves, you have 3 minutes," she said. "That's all I'll need." I set my folder on the podium and opened to page 12. This is a certified survey prepared by County Engineer Alexander Navarro. It shows your Phase 3 sewer line, storm drain, and 6 housing foundations encroaching onto Parcel 47A, property of the Reeves Family Trust. A murmur swept the room. Lorna tapped her pen. "That's an error. We've had our own surveyor." "Who filed under a different parcel ID?" I interrupted. "And never recorded the easement." I flipped to the next page. "Here's correspondence from the Water District. No record found." Her composure cracked. "We were told the land was conveyed." "You were told wrong," I said. "And under Texas Civil Code Section 93.101, every structure built on another's property without lawful easement is subject to removal or forfeiture." The county liaison finally looked up. "He's right," he muttered. "That statute's clear." You could feel the air shift, chairs squeaking, whispers tightening. I continued, steady but calm. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to inform. Effective immediately, all work, maintenance, and occupancy on the affected area is unauthorized. Notices have been filed." Lorna's voice sharpened. "You can't just walk in here and—" I closed the folder. "Actually, I can. It's my living room you built over." Gasps and low laughter rippled through the crowd. Someone in back muttered, "He's serious." When the meeting adjourned in chaos, I slipped out quietly. Marie called the moment I reached the truck. "How'd it go?" They saw the map. And they blinked. She exhaled. "Then tomorrow we file." The following week, the HOA's attorney reached out, an overly polite man named Jeff Carmichael, who spoke in clauses. "We'd like to explore a resolution," he said over speakerphone. "Of course," Marie answered, "but you'll need to halt all activity pending title verification." "Temporarily, yes," Jeff agreed, though I could hear the panic behind his tone. Within days, construction crews vanished. The site grew quiet except for cicadas and wind through unfinished gutters. I started jogging the perimeter again, feeling the ground firm under my boots. That silence was better than any victory parade. Late one evening, Thomas and I sat on my porch watching the sun slide down behind the half-built roofs. He asked, "What happens next?" "They'll negotiate," I said. "Then they'll threaten. Then they'll fold." He grinned. "You sound like you've done this before." "Just once," I said, thinking of my dad through him. By mid-October, the HOA issued notice canceling all closings pending administrative review. Rumors swirled, lawsuits, fraud investigations, even whispers that the bank might freeze their accounts. Before bed that night, I checked the file cabinet again, every document, every receipt, every photo, everything in order. Tomorrow, we'd start the formal claim. Before I closed my laptop, I typed a single line into my notes. Never fight loud. Fight long. And I knew this was only the halfway mark. The real battle, the one that would decide the community's future, was about to start. The HOA didn't stay quiet for long. 2 days after that administrative review notice went out, I got a new envelope on my porch, no postage, just slid under the door. Inside was a cease and desist letter printed on embossed letterhead. It accused me of trespassing upon community grounds, filming without consent, and defamatory communications. Marie laughed so hard she nearly spilled her coffee. "Classic intimidation," she said. "File it, date it, ignore it." I added it to my binder under harassment. The tabs were starting to look like a rainbow of bureaucratic spite. The following week, they tried a new tactic. A code inspector appeared unannounced, clipboard ready. "Routine property review," he claimed, glancing over my shed like it was hiding state secrets. He left with a single citation. "Unauthorized structure over 120 square feet lacking secondary egress." I measured it myself, 118 square feet on the nose. Marie sent a rebuttal with photos, and a tape measure and frame. The citation vanished, but the message was clear. They wanted me exhausted. For the first time, fear crept in around the edges. Late nights, I catch the glint of that white SUV again, headlights off, engine humming. Thomas told me to install cameras. I did. 4 of them motion-trigger cloud-stored. Each blink of red light felt like a small defense against the dark. Still, part of me worried for the buyers, for the young families who'd signed mortgages on these houses. They weren't villains. They were collateral. My dad used to say, "You can't burn a house to kill the mold." I kept reminding myself of that. One Sunday, a young couple knocked on my door. Ryan and Elise, new residents from Lot 12. They looked uneasy. "We heard the HOA built on land that isn't theirs," Ryan said. "Is that true?" I nodded. "Afraid so." Elise bit her lip. "What happens to us?" "Nothing if I can help it," I said. "You'll keep your home. I'm fighting for fair ground, not eviction." That conversation hardened my resolve. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about accountability for everyone trapped in the same machine. Knowledge nugget number 4. In many states, HOA officers owe a fiduciary duty to act in the community's best interest. Violating that through misrepresentation or misuse of funds exposes them to personal liability, not just the association's insurance. By November, the HOA board doubled down. They filed a motion to quiet title claiming adverse possession. Marie smirked when she read it. They just admitted you owned it first. We drafted our counterclaim. Declaratory judgment, trespass damages, and injunctive relief. The hearing was scheduled for December 14th. Meanwhile, I laid my next move. Alex, the surveyor, had traced the sewer main back to the city's connection point. Turns out, the HOA's contractor had tied into a municipal line using a provisional permit, one that expired 90 days ago. Without renewal, the entire system operated out of compliance. That was the dynamite I needed. I contacted the city's public works department, requesting a verification inspection to ensure safety for new residents. They scheduled it for the same week as the court hearing. Marie caught on immediately. "You're syncing the inspections with the hearing?" "Exactly," I said. "When the city walks in, the judge will already have my deed on file." She whistled. "That's leverage. You build a domino stack." Late that night, I walked the boundary line again, flashlight beam cutting through fog. My boots crunched over gravel and newly seeded lawns. Every sound felt like a heartbeat, counting down to something inevitable. Thomas met me halfway, carrying his thermos. "You know they're panicking, right?" he said. "Heard they called an emergency meeting about insurance exposure." "They should panic," I said. "They built a subdivision on borrowed dirt." He sipped his tea. "You ever think about what comes after? When it's over?" I didn't answer right away. I was thinking about the urn on my desk, the one thing I hadn't moved since this all started. "Maybe a park," I said finally. "Something Dad would have wanted." He nodded. "That'd be a good ending." The night before the hearing, I ironed my one good shirt, stacked my documents by thickness, not color. The hum of my printer filled the room like distant rain. On top of the stack sat a single sheet. City of Plano, Sewer Line Compliance Inspection Notice. At 9 a.m. the next morning, I'd walk into court with that in my hand. And for the first time in months, I wasn't afraid. The ground might have shifted beneath us all, but for once, I was the one holding the map. The courthouse smelled like old varnish and nerves. I arrived early, folder under my arm, papers warm from the car heater. Marie joined me outside courtroom 3B, balancing her thermos like it was an extra limb. "Remember," she said, "truth doesn't need volume." Inside, the HOA's table looked like a showroom. 3 attorneys, projector, and enough printed exhibits to fill a filing cabinet. Lorna sat behind them, stiff and silent, pearls glinting under the fluorescent lights. The judge, an older man named Callahan, entered with the slow authority of someone who'd seen too many property disputes. "Let's make this simple," he said. "Who owns the dirt?" Marie smiled slightly. "Your Honor, Exhibit A." We handed over the deed, the survey, and the city's inspection notice, each page time-stamped and certified. The HOA's lawyer, Jeff Carmichael, leaned into his mic. Your Honor, there's a reasonable belief of consent. Mr. Reeves's parcel was referenced in a prior covenant draft. Callahan adjusted his glasses. Reference is not conveyed. Do you have a recorded transfer? Jeff hesitated. Not recorded, but... Then you don't have it, Callahan interrupted. His gavel tapped once, gentle but final. Motion to quiet title is denied. Mr. Reeves retains ownership pending further review. A murmur rippled through the room. Lorna's jaw tightened. Outside the courtroom, cameras waited. Local news, maybe tipped off by someone in the clerk's office. One reporter asked, Mr. Reeves, is it true they built 96 homes on your property? True enough that the map says so. I replied, but I'm not here for demolition. I'm here for correction. Marie whispered, good soundbite. That night, the HOA went into overdrive. Residents flooded social media with half-truths and rumors. He's stealing our homes. He's suing families. He's bankrupting the neighborhood. I didn't respond. Silence, I'd learned, makes better headlines than anger. Still, the harassment intensified. Anonymous letters. One morning, a rock through my window with a note taped to it. Leave before we make you. Thomas replaced the glass himself, muttering, they're scared animals now. Don't let him corner you. I pretended it didn't shake me, but at night, I double-locked the doors, checked the cameras twice. One clip showed a figure walking my fence line with a flashlight at 2:17 a.m. That kind of fear isn't cinematic. It's slow poison. A few days later, Marie called. We need to escalate. They're acting outside their charter now. How? I asked. Selective enforcement. False reporting. Harassment. We bring it to the State Office of Consumer Protection. I agreed, but I also wanted to understand how deep this went. So I drove to the county recorder's office and requested the HOA's incorporation records. In a dim archive room, under flickering lights, I found the missing puzzle piece. The developers' trust that had seeded Evergreen Crest also held 40% of the HOA's voting rights. That meant every community decision they'd made, every budget, every policy, was rigged from inception. I called Marie. They've been voting for themselves. She whistled. Conflict of interest, plain as daylight. We prepared an addendum for our case and forwarded it to the district attorney's office. It might not lead to charges yet, but it built the wall higher around them. By mid-December, the city inspector arrived at the site, right on schedule. I met him at the gate, clipboard in hand. His name was Officer Daniels, and he had that bureaucratic calm of man who'd seen everything twice. Just need to verify line compliance, he said. I led him to the boundary where the sewer main disappeared under my soil. He crouched, took readings, jotted notes, and finally stood. You're right, he said. This isn't on municipal record. It's unauthorized infrastructure. He filed his report that afternoon. By the next morning, the HOA's insurance carrier had received a copy. When the cancellation notice came through, it was like thunder in an empty valley. Without liability coverage, the HOA couldn't operate. No maintenance, no payroll, no legal defense. The dominoes had begun to tilt. Marie called it poetic justice. They built an empire on your foundation, she said. Now it's sinking under its own weight. Still, part of me hesitated. Winning felt too close to losing something else. My peace, maybe. I thought about Elise and Ryan, the couple from Lot 12, and the fear in their eyes. I didn't want their dream home to become a cautionary tale. That night, Thomas asked a question that stuck with me. What's your end game, Jake? Payback or repair? I didn't have an answer yet. I just stared out at the subdivision lights flickering through the fog and said, maybe both. A week later, a notice appeared on every community mailbox. Emergency HOA meeting, January 3rd, 7 p.m. Lorna wanted to rally what was left of her power. She didn't know it yet, but that meeting would be her last as president. I marked the date in red ink. Beneath it, I wrote 2 words, set piece. January came cold and sharp, the kind of Texas winter that feels more like punishment than weather. The HOA meeting was set for that Thursday evening, and the anticipation hung in the neighborhood air thicker than frost. I drove past their community center twice that day, rows of SUVs already filling the lot, porch lights flickering as residents prepared for spectacle. Marie called as I was tightening my tie. "Everything's filed and time-stamped," she said. "City report, insurance notice, and the certified deed package. You're walking in with a full hand." "I just need to stay calm," I said. She laughed softly. "You've been calm for months. Tonight's just punctuation." Thomas met me at the curb outside the center, holding his thermos like a trophy. "I came for the show," he said. "Thought you might need a friendly face in the crowd. Stay behind the cameras." I told him, if this goes how I think, it'll get loud. Inside, the atmosphere was brittle. Residents filled every chair, their voices low but charged. At the head table sat Lorna, still in pastel, still pretending to own the room. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw a hint of uncertainty behind the polish. She opened the meeting with her usual formality. "We're here to discuss the unfortunate situation involving Parcel 47A, she began, emphasizing unfortunate, like a lawyer testing a word for poison. "Mr. Reeves has chosen to misinterpret certain documents." I stood before she could finish. "No misinterpretation," I said. "Just math and maps." A few heads turned my way. Cameras, phones mostly, clicked into recording mode. I set my binder on the podium and opened it with deliberate slowness. The sound of the metal rings snapping echoed like a small verdict. "Tonight," I said, "I'll clear up the confusion once and for all." I lifted the first page. This is the original deed, recorded in 1979. Reeves Family Trust. Continuous tax payments through 2024. No transfer, no conveyance, no sale. I flipped to the next. This, I held up a photo of the sewer line, is the infrastructure your HOA built across that deed. Without authorization, without easement, without permit renewal. Gasps rippled through the room. Lorna tried to speak, but I kept going. Here's the city's report verifying the violation, dated December 17th. And here, I pulled the next sheet with a small flourish, is the insurance cancellation notice effective January 1st. Your board no longer has coverage. You cannot conduct legal business, collect fees, or enforce rules. As of now, every resident deserves a refund for illegal assessments tied to Phase 3. The room erupted. Voices clashed, chairs scraped. Someone shouted, "Is this true?" Lorna slammed her gavel, but it was like tapping against a flood. That's when Officer Daniels entered through the side door, clipboard in hand. His presence cut through the chaos. "Ma'am," he said to Lorna, "the city confirms Mr. Reeves' parcel remains private property. He's within his rights to address this meeting. Neutral authority. Check." Lorna's voice quivered. "You don't understand. This will ruin us." I nodded. "Then let's fix it properly." I pulled one last document from the folder, a quiet title settlement draft, already notarized, the ink still faintly blue. Here's what I'm offering. The Reeves Family Trust will grant an easement for the existing utilities and structures. In return, the HOA will commit to 3 reforms: full financial audit by an independent CPA, 2-term limits for all officers, and open access to meeting minutes for every member. The room went silent. You could hear someone's bracelet clink in the back row. Lorna stared at me, disbelief turning into calculation. "You're offering a deal?" "I'm offering a future," I said. "One without lawsuits, without lies, without residents paying for other people's mistakes." Thomas clapped once, then twice. Others followed, hesitant at first, then louder, until the sound filled the hall. The HOA board huddled for 5 tense minutes. When Lorna stood again, her voice had lost its edge. "We accept the terms." Daniel stepped forward, noting it in his report. "Recorded and witnessed," he said. And just like that, months of tension cracked into something close to relief. Outside, the air smelled of cold asphalt and faint victory. Thomas grinned. "You pulled the pin and still managed not to blow it up." "I didn't want rubble," I said. "I wanted reform." He nodded. "You got both." That night, I drove home with the signed agreement on the passenger seat. The dashboard light caught the embossed seal, and for a moment it looked like the paper itself was glowing. I parked, walked inside, and set it beside my father's urn. "Got it back, Dad," I whispered, and made it better. But I knew it wasn't finished yet. The dominoes had only just begun to fall. The banks, the press, the regulators. And tomorrow, they'd all come looking for answers. By the next morning, it wasn't just the subdivision talking. It was the whole county. The local paper's headline read, "Engineer forces HOA to admit unauthorized build. 96 homes in legal limbo." The article quoted Officer Daniels' report and mentioned the reforms clause almost like it was a treaty. Marie texted me a photo of the article with 3 words. "You did it." But victory has a half-life. The fallout came fast. The HOA's management company suspended services pending the audit. Trash pickup stopped. Landscaping crews didn't show, and panic started to ripple through the homeowners. I spent that week fielding calls and visits, some grateful, some furious. Ryan from Lot 12 stopped by again. "You saved us," he said. "But what happens now? Who runs this place?" "The residents," I told him. "Once the audit's done, you elect a new board. Transparent, fair, local." He nodded, half in relief, half in disbelief. "Feels like we're waking up from a bad dream." Meanwhile, the dominoes I'd expected started falling. The HOA's bank froze their reserve account pending verification of officer authority. A local TV crew showed up at the entrance sign to film a segment titled Reeves Ridge, the HOA that went too far. Lorna's name was in the cheering, followed by the words under investigation. She called me that night. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Her voice was hoarse. "You humiliated me, Jacob." "No," I said quietly. "You did that when you signed off on lies." A pause, and softer. "You could have destroyed me completely. Why didn't you?" "Because people deserve a chance to fix what they broke," I said. "Even you." The line went dead, but I heard her cry before it disconnected. 2 days later, Thomas and I were at the diner, watching the new news on the wall-mounted TV. The reporter stood by the half-finished sign they'd meant to unveil months ago. "Sources say the State Inspector General's office has opened a review into Evergreen Crest development practices," she said. Thomas let out a low whistle. "That's one hell of a domino." "More to come," I said, but my voice carried less heat now. "Just wait." Marie called that afternoon with an update. The audit's in progress. Preliminary findings, misallocated funds, unauthorized disbursement, and conflict of interest violations. They're cooked. I exhaled long and slow. Good. Maybe they'll learn what stewardship means. She laughed quietly. "You sound like a reformer, not a plaintiff." "Maybe I'm both." The following week, I attended what they called a community transition meeting. The old board had resigned, leaving folding chairs and half-empty coffee cups behind. The new residents committee, led by Ryan and Elise, took over. They asked me to speak, and though I tried to decline, Thomas nudged me forward. I cleared my throat and faced a room of anxious but hopeful faces. "I didn't fight to win land," I said. "I fought to remind everyone that property law isn't about fences. It's about trust. We build communities when we build accountability." They applauded, soft but real. As the crowd dispersed, one older man approached me, a retired judge named Halvorson who'd lived in Phase 2 for a decade. "You handled this cleaner than most lawyers I've seen," he said. "If you ever want to run for the county commission, you've got my vote." I smiled. Let me enjoy one quiet night first. Later that evening, as I packed up the last of my documents, I noticed a letter slipped under my door. This one wasn't a threat. It was a handwritten note from Lorna. "Jacob, I resigned today. You were right about everything. I don't expect forgiveness, but I am sorry. I hope the community becomes what it should have been from the start. LM." I folded it carefully and tucked it into the binder behind the first violation notice they ever sent me. Poetic symmetry. Outside, the night was calm for once. Streetlights hummed over the new homes, and laughter carried from the playground where kids chased each other under the amber glow. It looked like a neighborhood again, not a battlefield. Thomas came by with 2 mugs of coffee. "So what now, hero?" he asked. "I've got one more thing to do," I said. "Something that seals it for good." He raised an eyebrow. "Another document?" "Something better," I said. I looked across the field where my dad's old workshop used to stand, now level but still mine, and pictured the park I'd promised him. Not a monument to revenge, just a space where kids could play, and nobody would ever argue about who owned the dirt beneath their feet. I'd already drawn up the sketch. All that was left was the final approval. The park proposal went before the city council 2 weeks later. Marie sat beside me, tapping her pen against her notebook in rhythm with my heartbeat. Thomas was in the back row, thermos in hand like always. The plan was simple. Dedicate 1 acre of the reclaimed parcel to a public green space, funded by the restitution the HOA now owed me under the settlement. I stepped up to the podium when my name was called. "This land caused a lot of noise this past year," I said. "But my father used to say, if you can't quiet the noise, turn it into music. I'd like this park to be that music. Open to everyone, managed by none." The council voted unanimously, 6-0. The gavel struck once, and it was done. As we left the chamber, the winter sun broke through the clouds like someone upstairs decided to stage it that way. Marie grinned. "You just turn a lawsuit into a legacy." "Let's hope it grows grass," I said. Within months, the transformation began. Bulldozers cleared debris, then landscapers came with saplings and benches. The sound of hammers that once built conflict now built something better. They called it Reeves Commons. I never asked them to, but I didn't object either. News crews returned for follow-ups. From lawsuit to landmark, how one man reformed his HOA. The community's new board released public audit results online. $2.8 million recovered. Monthly dues cut by 20%. New bylaws requiring financial transparency and resident oversight. A modest but honest system born from the ashes of arrogance. One evening, I walked the park alone. The air smelled like cut cedar and wet soil. The laughter of kids echoed across the open space. Thomas waved from a bench near the path. "Looks good, Jake. Real good." "Feels lighter now," I said, like the ground finally forgave us. He smiled, the kind of smile that comes from someone who's seen too many fights end badly. "You didn't just win. You taught Em what winning should look like." I looked out across the homes. Their porch light steady. No more letters taped to doors. No more fear. For the first time in a long time, peace didn't feel like silence. It felt like balance. If you believe I fought the right way and this is how it should end, say a few words in the comments for your friend, the one who's still scared to stand up to their HOA. Subscribe so you don't miss the next story, because the next one could be theirs. And as responsible citizens, share this so others learn that law, when used right, is the most powerful kind of fairness. That's on us. Before I left, I placed a small bronze plaque at the park's edge. It read, "Dedicated to James Reeves, who believed ownership means responsibility." The light hit it just right, casting a thin gold reflection on the path. Later, a local reporter asked me what changed after all this. I told her the truth. Lorna took a plea for filing false statements and received a year of probation. Evergreen Crest paid restitution to the HOA and lost its development license for 5 years. The insurance carrier imposed mandatory ethics training for every community board it covered. And the residents, the ones who had once whispered behind blinds, now ran quarterly open meetings under a new charter called Neighbors First. As for me, I went back to my drafting table, same chair, same creaky floorboard. Sometimes I still hear phantom construction in the distance, that metallic rhythm that once marked my anger, but it fades quickly, replaced by the rustle of kids playing in the park. One afternoon, a teenager skating down the new path called out, "Hey, Mr. Reeves, what's the next project?" I smiled, tapped the edge of my pencil, and said, "Whatever land needs defending next." Then I turned back to my blueprints, the paper bright under the afternoon light, and for the first time since that first shovel hit my soil, the world felt level again.